You ever hear a ghost story that's so specific, so chilling that it makes you wonder if there's some kind of message hiding in the fear? Well, today we're diving into a story out of Chandigarh, India, that kicks off at a wild party but ends on a completely deserted road with an encounter that might just have been a life-saving warning.
Just imagine this for a second. You're trapped, you're terrified, you're in a car that's literally defying the laws of physics, and the ghostly thing driving it turns to you and says that, "Don't worry, just sit quietly." That one single chilling phrase is right at the heart of our story today, a night that went horribly and maybe even supernaturally wrong. All right, so let's meet our main character, Rita. She's 25, a medical student, and comes from a pretty wealthy family in Chandigarh. Our story starts on what should have been a normal night out, a friend's birthday party. But this wasn't just any party. It was set up for pure, unfiltered indulgence, far, far away from anyone who might be watching.
So, to really get what happens next, you gotta understand the world Rita was living in. This wasn't just trust fund kids. She and her friends were actually young entrepreneurs. They'd built their own successful startups. So yeah, they lived this life of complete excess. Birthday trips to Dubai or London, totally normal. Garages packed with high-end cars, of course. They were so obsessed with their image that they actually avoided local trips, because they thought it would make them look, well, less rich.
The birthday boy, Sumit, decided he wanted a party with absolutely zero rules. So where do you have a party like that? He picks his family's remote outhouse. And when I say remote, I mean it. We're talking a massive bungalow, 50 kilometers outside the city, at the very end of a 10-kilometer-long, bumpy, unpaved dirt road. It was the perfect spot to get loud with no neighbors and no limits. So as the night goes on, you can imagine how it went, right? The music gets louder, the drinks are flowing, and Rita, like everyone else, is just completely swept up in it. Her parents kept calling, and finally, annoyed by the buzz, she just silences her phone. She's so lost in the party, she doesn't even realize when her phone battery eventually just dies, completely cutting her off from the outside world.
And then, around 2 a.m., the whole vibe just shatters. One of her friends, who's also super drunk, stumbles over and tells her that her dad had been calling him over and over. The news was bad, her mom was seriously sick, and she needed to get home, like right now. In a total panic, her judgment clouded by alcohol, Rita makes a decision that would change everything.
And this is where it all goes wrong. It's like this perfect storm of isolation, just one small thing after another. She rushes out to her car, way too drunk to be driving, but she swears to her friend she's fine. She figures she'll just charge her phone in the car, but then she realizes the cable's gone. And just as a storm starts to roll in, the absolute worst thing happens. Her car sputters and dies, leaving her totally and completely stranded.
And get this, she was only 5 kilometers from the party. Just 5. But out there in the pitch-black darkness, on a road to nowhere, with a storm brewing, she might as well have been 100 miles away. She's alone, she's scared, and with no way to call anyone for help, she just breaks down and cries. So there she is, completely desperate, and she starts praying. And just then, almost like an answer, she hears it, the sound of a car coming up the road from the direction of the farmhouse. Headlights cut through the dark. As the car slows down, she sees an elderly woman behind the wheel. Overcome with relief, Rita just runs to the window, quickly explains what happened, and the woman just gestures for her to get in. But the second she gets in that passenger seat, that feeling of relief just evaporates. There's this sickening smell in the car, an overpowering stench of something rotting, something foul, that she just can't place. At first, she tries to write it off, maybe it's just her panic. But the smell was just too strong, too awful to ignore. Her eyes are darting around the car, trying to find the source of that smell, and then she sees it. She glances over at the driver, and her blood runs absolutely cold. On the side of the old woman's neck is a horrifying gaping wound. A huge chunk of flesh was just gone. It was so deep that Rita, being a medical student, could clearly see the bone underneath, and she knew instantly there is no way a living person could survive an injury like that. She's completely frozen in terror. Her eyes drop down to the floor, and what she sees is straight out of folklore, straight out of a nightmare. The woman's feet were pointing the wrong way. They were completely backward. And that's when the sickening realization hits her. She wasn't being saved by a kind stranger. She was in a car with something that was not of this world. And then, as if it couldn't get any more terrifying, her brain puts it all together. She looks again at the woman's backward feet and realizes something even more impossible. They weren't resting on anything.
There was no gas pedal, no brake, no clutch. The car was moving all by itself, pushed forward by some unseen, unnatural force. She was trapped in a phantom car.
And then the car just stops. Frantic, Rita starts yanking on the door handle, but it's locked. She's pleading, begging the woman to please, please let her out. The old woman just turns to her, her face totally blank, and calmly says, "My husband wants to get in the car. He'll sit, then we'll go." And right on cue, the back door opens, and an old man gets in, his face just as lifeless as hers. Rita screams, and then everything goes black.
The next thing Rita knows, she's waking up. She's in a hospital bed, and her parents and friends are all there, looking incredibly worried. She's completely confused, asking them how they found her, totally convinced that she died in some kind of violent, supernatural car crash. But the story they told her was a very, very different story.
So look at this. On one side, you have Rita's memory, a terrifying ride with two ghosts that ended in a horrible crash. But on the other side, here's what actually happened, according to her friends. They got worried when she didn't come back, so they went looking for her. And they found her passed out on the road, next to her own car. She was all alone, her body was cold, she was bleeding from her nose and mouth, but there was no other car, no old couple, and zero sign of any crash.
So while Rita's recovering, her mom tells her this old local legend about that exact road. Years ago, a wealthy, elderly couple who, loved to drink and drive, were killed in a horrific crash with a truck right there. Ever since, people say their ghosts appear to anyone who drives drunk on that same stretch of road. But here's the twist. They don't show up to hurt people. The legend says they appear to stop them, to prevent anyone else from making the same fatal mistake they did.
And that really brings us to the heart of this whole thing, doesn't it? So, what are we supposed to make of all this? Was Rita's experience just a drunken hallucination, maybe fueled by panic and some ghost stories she'd heard before? Or was it something more? The real answer, I think, lies in the story's powerful underlying message.
What happened to Rita is a perfect example of something called a cautionary tale. These are stories that aren't just meant to scare you, they're meant to teach you something. Fear is an incredibly powerful tool, and for centuries, people have used stories just like this one to burn critical warnings into our brains, making the lesson completely unforgettable.
And really, that's the whole point. That's what this story is really about. The rotting smell, the backward feet, the phantom car, all those absolutely terrifying details exist for one single purpose: to create an unforgettable, visceral warning against the very real dangers of getting behind the wheel when you've been drinking. The horror is just the delivery system, but the message, it's crystal clear.
So in the end, does it even matter if you believe she saw real ghosts, or if her drunk, terrified mind just cooked up this crazy hallucination? The outcome was exactly the same. She was stopped. She was prevented from driving any further down that dark road. And that might have saved her life. Which leaves us with one last question to think about. Was this a terrifying encounter with the dead? Or was it some kind of strange supernatural rescue? A ghost story? Or maybe a guardian angel?